The LA Chargers were one of the many surprise teams of the 2024 NFL season. A lot of people didn't know what to expect from a first-year Jim Harbaugh-led team and from a team who really hasn't done much with Justin Herbert as their quarterback. There were a lot of new names and young players that were going to be forced into high leverage positions, and most of those guys that were added stepped up pretty well and helped make this team into a wild card team. In 2025, there were some pretty significant losses for the LA Chargers, namely on the defensive side of the ball. Guys like Joey Bosa, Christian Fulton, Poona Ford, Morgan Fox, these are guys who were either starters or were pretty major contributors to this team. Christian Fulton had to step up with the loss of Asante Samuel during the year. And obviously, Joey Bosa has been a LA Charger for the last 6-7 years now and has been one of the mainstay guys as that top-tier pass rusher up until 2024 when his production really took a step back. And then you also have the loss of Josh Palmer as a receiver for this team, even though they did add Mike Williams, which I will get into with the additions of this portion of the video. But Josh Palmer was one of those younger players developing into a solid second or third option in the passing game, so it does hurt to lose him. Now to the re-signings and additions of this team. In terms of the new signings, you add some guys who are either coming off of really solid years or are young and could develop into guys that could have really solid years. You look at guys like Najee Harris, Mekhi Becton, Tyler Conklin, and Andre James. These are guys coming in to positions of need for the LA Chargers, whether it's guys who are going to help the offensive line or are going to help the playmaker positions. Benjamin St-Juste is a guy who was taken in the second or third round, I believe, by the Washington Commanders a few years ago and never really developed into that top-tier cornerback. But he has a pedigree. He has a lot of talent, and you think that you put him into your system and he becomes an even better player than what he's showcased before. The Chargers also re-sign Khalil Mack as well as a lot of other big-name players back to their team. You have guys like Bradley Bozeman, Elijah Molden, Taylor Heineke, who obviously is going to be a backup quarterback, but I think there was a lot of really good things that came from him being the backup quarterback last year for the Chargers. And overall, I think between their re-signings and their additions to this team, they did a pretty good job of keeping a very competitive team and a very talented team around Justin Herbert. Now, moving to the draft for the LA Chargers. So in 2024, they had a great year, right, in terms of drafting. It was the first year of drafting through Joe Ortiz, and they really hit on a lot of their picks. Joe Alt, even though he didn't play the entire season for the Chargers, he was a very good selection with that number 5 overall pick. Ladd McConkey was probably one of the better wide receivers that was selected, and he got taken in the second round. Tarheeb Steele and Cam Hart, two guys who, like Christian Fulton last year, they were forced into bigger roles due to the injury of Asante Samuel. And especially in Tarheeb Steele's case, he really shined in the moments that he was on the field for LA. And so moving that to what they have in front of them in 2025 for the draft, there are 10 selections in total for the LA Chargers. Most of them come in those 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. In fact, they have 4 selections in the 6th round. And you hope that this team can continue what they did last year. But at the same time, I don't know if they're really hinged on the draft for the success of this team. I think what it's going to be is build up your strengths and build strength on strength with younger players. The only position of need I really see for the LA Chargers is really another receiver. Yes, they have Ladd McConkey. Yes, they have Mike Williams. They have other guys on the team that can make a positive impact at the wide receiver and running back position. And so I would think it's another receiver, or if you get lucky enough and you have a tight end like a Colston Loveland, or you have, Tyler Warren is definitely not making it to 22. So it might be a receiver at 22, like a Matthew Golden, if he's there. Or, Eric Alamanior, I believe is how you pronounce that name, the wide receiver from Stanford. There's going to be options available. So I don't really see how they can go wrong with their first round pick. Like I said, it's just going to be building strength on strength. And even if they really wanted to, they can develop the offensive line even more if they wanted. Yes, they have Slater. Yes, they have Alt. They have Beckman, Bozeman, Johnson, Salier, Pipkins. They've got a lot of really young guys on their team. If they really wanted to, though, I mean, a lot of these guys are going to have contracts coming up after 2025. And I don't know how tied to Rashawn Slater and Trey Pipkins we are. But if it's not the offensive line and it's not the wide receiver position, like I said, tight end, possibly more guys on the defensive line, because that's probably their weakest spot is D-line or in the linebacker core. But I think other than that, I mean, the secondary is pretty filled up. The wide receiver room, if you're not adding a true number one receiver, I don't think it's the best idea to draft one later because there's already a lot of really young guys and there's not enough room to try to develop another. Running back, I think you're set probably with Najee Harris for a year and maybe you replace him like you did with J.K. Dobbins. Wide receiver, a top-tier wide receiver if they feel that there's one available. A tight end if one is available either in first round or in the later rounds. I mean, I love the idea of putting somebody like Harold Fannin Jr. on this team, or even if we're getting later in the rounds, somebody like a Gunnar Helm. But, I mean, you can't go wrong either with somebody like Mason Taylor or Elijah Arroyo. But like I said, Harold Fannin is like... I think we're going to look back and Harold Fannin's going to be one of the better players selected in this year's draft. I think he would bring immense value to the Chargers offense. So for a grade for the Chargers, I think this year was pretty good for free agency. They didn't lose anybody that was really at the top of their game. Yes, it does hurt to lose Joey Bosa in terms of, that's just been a guy who's been there for a long time, and you hate to lose somebody who I think the fans liked. I don't think he was really disliked in LA as a Charger. But he wasn't at the top of his productive years anymore. And you still bring back a lot of really good guys to your roster, and you put yourself in the position for the draft to just build strength on strength or address the few weaknesses that you still have. So I give this team an A. A flat-out A. I think with what they were supposed to do, it was just keep a competitive team around Justin Herbert. And they did that, both defensively and offensively. They addressed some positions where they had weaknesses last year, and they added some strength as well. And I think overall, this was a pretty good year for the LA Chargers off-season. And that can be said regardless of how their draft turns out.